Hello everyone and welcome to Art Journaling with Heart. So this session is part of the Wanderlust live weekend that was hosted by Everything Art, and it has been an amazing creative boost. It's been so fantastic to be able to watch all the different lessons and to have a little glimpse into the different art styles and art techniques and tips and tricks and secrets that everybody's got to their processes. It definitely spices up your creativity and gives you a bit of inspiration to take further and to find your own style and your own twist on everything. So it's just been an absolutely fantastic weekend, and I'd like to say thank you so much to Jamie and Kasha and Amy and Saskia for all the work that they've put into this weekend. It really has been fantastic. So unfortunately my live stream was cut short due to internet connection problems and load shedding here in South Africa, and so we decided that we would give you a recorded version of this session so that you are able to have the full benefit of what art journaling with heart is. So I think let's start off by talking about why I feel that this is so important. And as I mentioned in my live stream, I think that we often tend to overlook those seemingly insignificant details in our lives, but that is where the magic lies. For me, I think that that is what makes our art journaling practice have an extra layer of depth and meaning. So I often think that if I had the privilege of finding my granny's art journal, I would love to be able to find those little spreads that capture her specifically. So having an art journal with all her art would be fantastic. It would be a treasure. But imagine paging through that journal and coming to a spread where she was capturing a spring of a certain year, and in that journal spread she had documented all the seeds that she had planted in her garden and was hoping to see bloom throughout that summer. Or what if she had documented some of her favorite books or films that she had recently watched, and next to each of those she had a little blurb about what made that so special to her. What was it that attracted her to that movie or the film, and what was the impact that it had on her? Or imagine having a spread where she was perhaps talking about a recent trip that she'd had, or feelings that she'd been having, and she had really taken the time to journal about it a little bit, add a photograph and some little snippets. So that's where gathering your ephemera is really exciting, because if you are documenting a artist date that you'd recently had, or perhaps a trip that you had taken, and you had some ticket stubs or maybe a menu or a program if it was a concert that you'd gone to watch, and you had included those in your journal spreads, that would make the whole experience come to life, and it would make it just a little bit more exciting. So very often those are things that we perhaps throw away, but if you think about gathering them and documenting them, it just makes the whole experience a lot richer. And another thing that I think is really important to include in these spreads obviously is then a photograph, just to document. So if it was perhaps a list of your recent favorite films, you could have a photograph of yourself lying on your couch, all snuggled up with your popcorn, watching a movie, or maybe a picture that you had snapped of yourself on your trip, something like that. I think that those little memories are really important, and it's important to include your face in your art journal. Make yourself a little bit more real to the people that are looking at your journals years from now. So obviously step one is going to be grabbing our ephemera and sort of starting to plan our spreads, and I'm going to chat you through that now. So if we have a look at this spread, for instance, it is very simple, but each piece has been selected for a specific reason, and let me chat you through it quickly. So my husband and I, along with our two oldest children, have decided to start training for our first half marathon, and every Saturday is our long run. So Friday night we start planning out our route, and that's where this piece of ephemera paper that looks like a map comes in, because that reminds me of the whole process of planning where it is that we're going to be going. And then for some reason along the way, I've been collecting succulents just randomly lying in the road and planting them out in my kitchen, and I've got quite a collection of those now. And so I've decided to add some paper down at the bottom with those succulents just to remind me of that little detail. And then over here I've added a little bit of a story behind this photograph and what it is that we do every Saturday. And so very simple, but I feel so connected to that little spread. Over here is something that's a little bit more complicated, a little busier, and this is documenting my journey through the artist's way, and specifically looking at what shifts I've been feeling within that process of working through the chapters. And here I've documented some of the things that I have found on my artist dates. So at the back here is a map of a hike that I did. This big chunk of white here is a zine that I created for myself, that I print out every week to document what it is that I've done, where I've gone, what inspiration I've gathered. So I've just added one of those printouts at the back. I love going on coffee dates, so I've got a stack of teacups over there, and then just a few bits and pieces that make me think of parts of this journey. So for instance, these little babies over here are for growth and nurturing, and then I've added a few little bits and pieces that speak to me. And what I really thought was a fantastic addition was this fun little post-it note that I've included that's got my journaling on it. So it's really fun to find new and inventive ways of documenting your story. So if we have a look at the spread I did during the live session, I was specifically looking at my word for 2022, which was curiosity, and what that word felt like. It's fun and whimsical, but also has some seriousness to it. So for instance, I added these stars in because it's making me think of gold stars that you get during your early school years when you've had a job well done. And so I've sort of added those in for that fun element of childhood. And then I've got the mother and child here again for that nurturing my curiosity and sort of developing that more within myself. I've added a card here, a playing card with the number 8, because I have a family of 8, and so that sort of reminds me of my family. And these two figures over here, I'm still not sure why they're there, but this is what is so magical about this process. Is I would encourage you to gather ephemera that speaks to you in the moment, and you might not know why it's there, but it will become clearer over time. A year from now you might look at this and it will make complete sense. So if you feel called to do it, add it in. It might not make sense right now, but it definitely will at some stage. Something else that I have included in this spread is, for instance, this piece of ephemera here that's got the arrows. So this was sent to me during a ephemera swap that I had done this year, and I really focused on trying to connect with artists around the world that I really admire and whose work I find inspiring, and I did some ephemera swaps with them. And so this is a reminder of that curiosity and building a connection with other artists. I've added in my papers that I love from Julie Valentine's Wanderlust class this year. I absolutely loved this class because it had that spirit of adventure and curiosity. And then another important part for me was Carolyn Dubie's floral jelly print class, and that for me was another class that stands out as being really focused on curiosity. So I had a look at what would happen if I pressed these flowers down into the paint and really got them saturated with paint, or what would happen if they were a little less covered in paint. What if I pressed them down on the plate a lot harder? What if I pressed them down a lot softer? So I have got a huge stack of these because I really got sucked into that curiosity of what if for this class. And so that is why I've pulled these little parts of ephemera that really speak to that curiosity within me throughout this year. I think what I'm going to do today is perhaps start looking at my word for 2023, because I like to sort of try on a few words, see how they feel, and find the right one for me. So I am going to start with the word that I feel strongest about, and that is expand. So what I have got here is some of the ephemera that I've pulled, specifically thinking all the time about what does this word expand mean? What does it look like? What does it feel like? So the colors and the textures, the patterns, everything that I've pulled has got a specific kind of connection to me with the word expand. So what you'll see is I have pulled a lot of clashing patterns, for instance. Let me get them out here for you. So if I put them all out here, you can then clearly see how those patterns are going to be sort of clashing and fighting with each other. Let's put that one in there. So I love this explosion, this energy explosion that's happening between all these patterns, and it just feels powerful and dynamic. And that is what I feel when I think about the word expand. So here again, I've got a jelly print that I created a few weeks ago, and this paper's been showing up in everything I do. I absolutely loved these papers, and it feels to me like a expanding on my practice, because up until this point jelly plates were very boring, but now I can't wait to pull that plate out again and to try some new ideas. So that for me is definitely expanding, and it's a bridge between curiosity and expanding, because you'll notice that this paper is in my curiosity spread too. And then I've got some of my papers from that paper making class again that I mentioned during our curiosity walkthrough by Julie Valentine. I've got them in there because that class was definitely significant for me. So those are my clashing patterns. I've got a few more here that I'd like to perhaps cut up and add, because I don't like straight edges. So for instance, if I had these two lying next to each other, that straight edge would definitely bother me. So that's where I have these smaller pieces, like for instance these circles, these crosses, these little crosses, these beautiful pink X's against this red. So once you start cutting those out, you can use those smaller elements to break up those solid lines. So I always gather my big pieces that are going to be the underlayers of my collage, and then I start gathering pieces that are smaller, finer detail for those little magical pops that come into the spread sort of towards the end. I've definitely got a very dynamic color palette going here with these reds and pinks, a few yellows and oranges. That also again makes me think of this energy of expand. I've got a few more pieces here that I'm not sure that I am going to use, but they are here for if I did decide that I needed to fill a hole. And then I've got this page, this Yes Girls page, that is from my 2020 21 diary that I used throughout the year. So there's all the planning that went on. And I love this idea of becoming part of a Yes Girls Club and just expanding, saying yes to more opportunities. So this feels like a fun addition to perhaps have on the spread. And then I've got a photograph, and this one feels really sassy. So I feel like it is really a good photograph to capture that energy of expanding. So this is basically what I have gathered to create my spread, and it's the process that, you know, my thought process behind why I'm gathering these pieces. So gather some larger areas to cover up those backgrounds, and then some smaller pieces for those finer details as you sort of move towards the end of your journal spread. So those are some of the things that I have pulled for this spread. And then I think we obviously have to chat about gluing things down. So when it comes to sticking your papers down, there are a few options. You could go with an acrylic gel medium, which is what I've done here. I'll demonstrate now too. But you can see that that creates a more solid, unified surface. So these papers are really stuck down. They are not coming up, they're not moving, and they're almost creating one plane. So even though they are layered, there is very little space between them. So let me show you here quickly. I'm going to stick this one down, and because it's such a big piece, the gel medium works nicely to be able to get that really well adhered to your surface. So just a thin layer of gel medium onto your paper, and then using a card, spreading those glue blobs down. And you can see here I'm starting from the center and working my way out so that you get all the air bubbles out, and also you make sure that the glue is right to the edges. So for instance here I can see that there is still a little bit of area that's not stuck down. There we go. So that is your acrylic medium, and layering with the acrylic gel that creates this solid surface. So I like using this method when I am working with a more multimedia kind of spread. So for instance, if with this journal spread you wanted to add some paints or inks, things like that, this would definitely be the route to go, because the acrylic medium almost seals your magazine images and creates a nice surface to then be able to work with, to be able to work on once everything has dried. So that is definitely the route I would take if I was going to be doing something that was a little bit more mixed media inclined. However, when I am creating these journal spreads and I'm only working with paper, then I would prefer to go with a glue stick and some tacky glue. And the reason for that is because I love when it looks as though these images can jump off of the page at any moment. And if they do decide to fall off in a year or 2 or 20, somebody can stick them back on for me. So that doesn't bother me at all. But using a glue stick has got the freedom of being able to lift it if you decide you wanted to add things under it at a later stage. So you've still got a bit of time to be able to lift the image and tuck things under it. So it gives you a bit more flexibility if you're using a glue stick. And the other thing is that when you are using this glue stick, once you start layering things, and you can see here that I don't go all the way to the edge. I like the idea of these edges curling. It creates a bit of life, a bit more dynamic movement within your collage. So personally, if I know I'm not going to be adding any wet medium on top of this, I would definitely be going in with a glue stick and using the tacky glue to stick down smaller pieces. But again, that's just a personal preference. You might decide that you like the idea of knowing that it's not going to be going anywhere, and so the gel medium is definitely going to be the one that you choose. So there's no hard and fast rule for this sticking down. It is just working out what you like and what feels right for you and your spread. So now that we've chatted about gluing everything down, let's get started with our journal spread. So right from the start, I know that I would like to cut out around the edge of this photograph because that feels a lot more dynamic than having this static edge. So I'm going to do that already, just so that when I start trying to work out what my layout is going to be, I'm going to be able to have a clearer idea right from the start, because my photograph is already cut out and in the shape that it's going to have in my final spread. So there we go. And you can see how just taking off this edge already creates something very dramatic. So the first thing I'm going to start doing is laying down my very busy patterns, because I know that that dynamic energy is what I want in the spread. And I'm not going to think about it too much. I feel that this is a process where you should really just trust your gut, listen to what it says. If it says put it down, don't question it too much. Got this one here. So I love this torn edge here, and I think I might put this one here, but I know that I want to have this one on this side, so I'm going to put this down. This edge here, this middle seam of my journal, whenever I am working in my journal, I try to make sure that if I'm going to be sticking down collage pieces, I stick them down across this seam. And the reason for that is because if you have a look at this spread, for instance, you can see how the seam is starting to split. Because of how the layout of this was, I wasn't able to stick anything down the middle, and so you can clearly see that splitting happening there. Here again, you can see that happening. But the spread between these two has got a lot of collage on it. So I have made sure to take that paper across the seam, down the center, and that is going to then hold this journal together. So whenever I am working with collage, I try and make sure that I take those pieces across the center as often as possible, just to hold this together, because the chunk is real. It's really getting very thick as we're approaching the end of this year, and so I need to try and support this journal in any way I can. And so for me, adding those collage pieces across the center is one of the ways that I can do that. Okay, so you'll notice that I'm putting glue on the top and I'm leaving this edge with glue, without glue, because that allows me to then be able to lift these pieces and put my images underneath that. Once I sort of start approaching the end of my project and I see that there are pieces that are lifting, that are bothering me, I can then go in and add some glue to those areas. But for now, not having the glue all the way to the edge is allowing me the freedom to be able to lift and tuck things under it. I love this piece of paper and the dynamic energy that it adds to everything. Maybe we tuck it in under here. Mustn't forget this one. I think I'll put this down the center here. So over here, adding this torn edge on that straight line sort of breaks that up and adds a bit of energy to the spread. So I'm definitely going to be looking for opportunities to do that layering. I love the darkness of this flower. I think that's too light. I have got a few very floral pieces here too that could be added. Let's see if we can get this little corner lifted. That seems to be very stuck. Okay. Maybe we should put this one on the edge. I think what's also important to remember with this is that these are going to be covered up. A lot of this is going to disappear in the process of adding the little details, and so it's important not to get too attached to what it is that you are sticking down, because this is going to change. And if you become too attached to something, often that leads to a fear of covering it up. And for me, that always leads to problems, because I sort of get caught up in trying to save areas instead of just allowing the piece to grow and develop as it wants to. So I find that if there is something that I'm feeling really precious about, I intentionally would then cover it. I would let go of it, and that allows me to have the freedom then to continue with my process. So I know that that might sound a little scary in the beginning, but once you have allowed yourself the freedom to experience that letting go a few times, it does become a lot easier. So maybe if we tore this edge a little bit here. It is nice to have the combination of this solid line against this torn edge too. So I would like to include some of that, perhaps. I think I'm going to stick this one over here. Do some lift and tuck there. Again, the fact that these edges are now getting all torn up and ruffled as I'm lifting and gluing, I love that. I love the whole look of that, and I definitely wouldn't want to glue it down too much. I would want to keep that sort of rawness to my collaged elements. I think what's bothering me with these is that the white feels very stark against everything else that's going on and sort of hindering my whole the whole look of the spread. Let's go ahead and cut out this Yes Girls. That is so fun. I love that addition. I love that. I think that that's perfect. That makes me very happy. So thinking that this would go over here, I think that that is just far more dynamic and it just feels better. So now we've just got to find a solution for this little spot. Are we just going to go straight in with a red? Maybe some of this could work. Let's tear a chunk of this and have a look and see how that feels. I think we need to soften the edge too. Let's put some glue on here and try and remember how that fit. Perfect. I'm going to stick this down. I think I'm going to do it down here. You see this edge again, there's that solid line over there, and by adding this onto that edge we break that whole section up, and this line that's over here, this piece breaks all of that up nicely. So we can put this portrait over here perhaps. I am just thinking about the fact that I would like to put my word somewhere. Maybe down the side. What would it look like if we added this in here? No, that doesn't feel right. Okay, so because this photograph is a little bit thicker, I'm going to go in with my tacky glue, and again I'm not going to go to the edges because I might want to tuck things under it. So staying away from those edges, I'm going to stick this down, and then for instance here, if this lifting bothers me at the end of the collage, I can then go back in with my glue and just stick those little pieces down. So now that we've got all these bigger pieces down, it's time to get to the fiddly bits, which is the last details and the final journaling and the magic. The magic is always in those little details. Okay, so now I've trimmed this down to size, made sure everything fits nicely, and I have cut out these big X's that I had, and I think because of how solid these lines are here, I'm definitely going to want to put these here in this corner just to break that up. Something like that. I like that. I do like that. So I'm going to keep that there. Then I've got these big X's that I cut out. Those pink X's that were against that red background. That feels great. That really feels fantastic. So again, you can see here that I've got these elements going off the page, being cut off, because that creates the illusion of the spread continuing out past the edges of my journal. So I like to make sure that there are some things that are cut off and that I don't have everything neatly fitting into my spread, but rather just allowing some space for the illusion that there is a continuation of the spread. I've got this little piece of magazine page that looks like a tape measure. That is quite fun. It starts at 39. Oddly enough, starts at 39. It's torn off here at 49. But I am currently 39 and turning 40 next year. So that is just a fun little addition. We could even circle 40 with something vibrant, you know, some red pen or something. So I know that I like all of these exactly where they are. I'm not even going to think any further and move them around. I'm going to go with my first placement. Where did this piece go to now? Ah, there it is. Must have stuck to my hand. Was it here? I think so. No, why doesn't that feel right now? Okay, let's put you off to the side here and stick these down first. I am loving this. The whole look of this is just making me happy, happy, happy. There we go. That's where this one belongs. Okay, let's put these down. So again, very specifically, I have stuck this X down here because this is a point where all these different pieces meet and those edges are sort of screaming at me. So having that X there covers that up and seamlessly connects everything without you having to see those edges sort of converging. This one too, the reason why I would put it here and not there, for instance, is because that then allows us to break up that edge a little bit more. Lovely. I think that that is fantastic. I'm so happy with this. I don't think I want to do anything else to it. I love it as it is. I feel like it's just dynamic and it's got that energy of expanding. So I need to add my journaling, and I've got this really bright paint swatch. Clownfish, happy, happy. That sounds exactly right. And I think I've been playing around with, you know, where I can put this, and covering the yes girls doesn't make me happy. Sort of having a flap here that makes no sense also doesn't make me happy. That is fun. That's a little mysterious, you know. So that is an option, but it doesn't feel quite as good as that. That to me really feels, it's got a bit of mystery to it. It adds to the story, and then you can flap that out and have your journaling here. So it isn't always visible, but it's there. For those who want to read it, it is there. And I love the idea of having it sort of just over the face there. So I've got my journaling down here, explaining my thoughts behind the word and why it is really resonating with me. And the next step is going to be to stick this in. So I've just got some simple clear tape here. and I want to just put this down over there. So now positioning. I like that there. Just make sure there's enough room for this to open. Okay, so that is down. Got a little flap. I've cut out my letters here, and I am going to stick them across this color card here. So I'm using my tacky glue for this because it's a little fidgety and thin, tiny little pieces, and so I just find that this tacky glue works best for that. Makes gluing things down a lot easier when they are so tiny. I do have a feeling my E is going to lean over the edge of this card, and again, that's something that I'm happy with that, because everything happens exactly as it should. So if this sticks out over the edge, then that's exactly how it was meant to be. Let's see. A little, and I'm happy with that. So now we've just got to give this a minute to dry, but these are already kind of stuck down. Just get it nice and straight there. That's it. The spread is done, and I feel like my journey towards finding my word for 2023 is well on its way. I love this. It makes me excited. This whole spread has really made me excited about the word expand and the possibilities that might have for me next year. Well, that's what art journaling with heart looks like and feels like when I am specifically trying to create a journal spread that focuses on something very personal that I might be experiencing in my life right now. Thank you so much for joining me through this session. I hope that you have gained a lot of inspiration to perhaps tackle some more journal spreads that are a little bit more focused on you and your particular season that you might be in. I would like to remind you, of course, that Wanderlust 2023 is on sale right now until the 31st of October at $99, and I think that that is a steal. So you should definitely go and check that out if you haven't yet. And of course, you can purchase one of the amazing aprons that you've seen on display the whole weekend. They are absolutely stunning, and I think a perfect addition to your art studio and your art practice for next year. Imagine slipping that on every time you dive into a new class. So I hope that you have enjoyed this session as much as I have. Thank you so much for joining me, and I can't wait to see what you create.